In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Hi, everybody, and welcome once again to the Daily Memphian Tigers Podcast with Greg Gaston. I am Greg Gaston, along with Frank Bonner, Tigers football beat writer for the Daily Memphian, and Tim Buckley, Daily Memphian deputy sports editor and senior writer. After a bye week, the Tigers and the Tulane Green Wave go at it Friday night. Both teams at 4-1, a huge game for the Tigers, to say the least. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for being with us, as always.
Hello, Greg.
Yeah, it's doing all right. You doing good?
I'm doing good. We'll see how the Tigers and the fandom is doing after Friday night's game. And Frank, let's jump right into it. As far as the importance of this game, Ryan Silverfield in his fourth season took over for Mike Norvell, coached in the Cotton Bowl, but that was all gravy. They weren't expecting to win that game. It was his first game, baby steps. Now, as his career has moved along at Memphis, he has had certainly intervals of extremely important games, others maybe not so as important. But this one, a lot of people are looking at as maybe being the most important game for Ryan Silverfield with what's at stake. A win doesn't guarantee a spot in the conference championship game, but it certainly puts you in a great position to be there. And that's the ultimate goal for this Tigers team. So I give you that question. Ponder a second and tell me what the answer is. Is it the most important game for Ryan Silverfield to this point?
Well, I'll say it's definitely among the most important games of his tenure for sure. Just with the implications of what this team means or what this win would mean in terms of looking ahead to possible conference championship. But is it the most important game of his tenure? I still would have to put the game against Tulane in the season finale in 2021 ahead of this one in terms of the importance of his tenure. And the reason why is because Memphis went into that game and they were 5-6. If they lose that game, they're 5-7. They end the year with a losing record the first time since 2013. And that's, Ryan Silverfield would have been the coach to break that streak. And winning that game keeps that streak alive. And so I think that the implications of that are a little bit more significant than the implications of this one. Just because if Memphis wins this game and then turns around and loses to UAB next week, well then, how important was this really? And if they win this, if they lose this game and then run the table, beat SMU and still only has one loss and is able to play Tulane in the conference championship, then how significant was this game really?
But you don't believe, before I get to Tim, you don't believe that in 2021, coming off the COVID year, in Silverfield's second season, that his job was in jeopardy if they lost that game. Do you?
In jeopardy of would he have gotten fired? No, I don't think that they would have fired him if he lost that game. But in terms of his tenure, if they would have lost that game, that would have been a stain on his tenure that he would have been known for the coach to have broken the bowl streak. I think that is, because Ryan's not going to get fired if he loses on Friday either.
No, your point's well taken, but you're looking more at bowl streaks and how important bowl streaks are. And it seems like right now, in the midst of a 9-year-in-a-row bowl streak for Memphis, that the fans, it's great. We're going to another bowl game. They want to get to they want playoffs. They want to get to the conference championship game and maybe play once again in a New Year's Six game, in the Cotton Bowl, which Tulane did last year and which Memphis did several years ago. So I think the way you can look at it is two different ways. The way you're looking at it, ending a streak, being known as that guy that ended that long streak. I'm looking at it as this game Friday, and I'm not saying it's the most important, but I'm leaning towards it, is because what's at stake? Now the stakes are higher. There are people that look at Ryan Silverfield and wonder if he can get the job done. And to be the best, you're going to have to beat the best. And that's Tulane Friday night. That's why I think it's significant.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not significant. I definitely agree with every point you made, and I do think it's one of the most significant. I would just put it at number 2 instead of number 1, because for every point that you made, this, if Memphis wants to be looked at the team that can be at the top of this, conference that a lot of people think is watered down, you have to win a game like this one on Friday. So I agree that this is a huge game in terms of his tenure. I just wouldn't put it at the top of the list.
Fair enough.
Look at Frank getting all riled up.
I love it.
Mild-mannered Frank.
Mild-mannered Frank. If I'm the one to rile him up, I'm very, very happy. Tim, I don't have to rile you up. You get riled up over anything. If they're a pin drop.
Frank's bucking the thought of everybody in the city of Memphis.
I love it. Well, what do you think? How would you answer that question,
Look,
Mr. Buckley?
Frank riled up Frank makes a good point about you don't want to be that guy, the guy that the streak ended with. But look at what you could look at. If they beat Tulane, and then you got the confidence going into the UAB game and North Texas and all the rest of it, you maybe start getting some consideration. You could be one of those big other receiving votes people. Mm-hmm. You completely squash my notion that the loss to Missouri wiped out your New Year's Six chances, because now all of a sudden you're in prime position for that. You're on ESPN. You're playing a team that was nationally ranked at the end of last season. You're playing the team that, with Cincinnati and Houston and UCF gone, is now viewed as the best in the conference. You want to change that perception. So mild-mannered, riled up Frank he's dead wrong.
Well, here's another point. Here's another point. You were talking end of the 21 season. We are right now in the middle of the 2023 season. If they lose this game Friday, and again, a loss or a win doesn't guarantee anything as far as the conference championship game, but if they lose, they're going to lose a bunch of the fans. Let's be honest. Basketball's on the horizon. If they lose, they're going to say, same old Memphis. They'll be solid. They'll make a bowl game. So what? They've done it 9 straight years. If you win, though, the fandom becomes, I think, even greater for the stretch run of the season, games that are all winnable. That's why I think it's so significant.
You're absolutely right. Frank also forgets that, and obviously Frank's never coached before, the next game is always the biggest game. First of all, I coach speak, I know, but that's a fact.
Well,
so it must be the biggest. It's huge for them right now. Plus 2021, that's ancient history. That was a minute ago, as the kids say. I don't know when a minute ago became a long time. But.
Well, let's give Frank a chance to counter here, because the mild-mannered Frank is ready to explode here.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, 2021 is so long ago. But when we're talking about the biggest game in a coach's tenure, you look at the entire tenure and the implications of what it meant at that time in real time versus the implications of what it means here in real time. And I get it. Like, I'm not trying to downplay the importance of this game. This game is huge.
Of course not.
I agree with every point that you guys made, and I do think this is a chance for Memphis to kind of solidify itself in what type of team they're going to be this year. But the reason why I wouldn't put it at number one is because, like you said, a win or a loss doesn't guarantee, dictate anything. Back in 2021, a win or a loss drew a line in the sand of what that season was going to be remembered for.
Right.
A lot of things can go bad still after a win, and a lot of things can go good still after a loss if they, depending on what happens on Friday.
All right, here's one thing we know. It's a pivotal game. It's a big game. It's an extremely important game for Ryan Silverfield. The question is Memphis as good as Tulane? Can they beat the Green Wave? This is a Memphis team that over the years, check this out. I know you guys probably know the stat. Since 2000, they've played 8 times in Memphis. Memphis has won every single game. For whatever the reason is, they've been able to take advantage of them in Memphis, which they'll try to do Friday night. But how much of a disparity is there right now between Tulane and Memphis? That's question A. Question B, how do you beat them?
I don't think there necessarily is. Tulane, part of that streak is Tulane wasn't always the cream of the crop.
No, of course not.
Yeah. A good program, a sound program, but they weren't, the Houstons of the world always.
There were the Sean King years where they were really good.
Well, yeah,
but
absolutely,
yes, they've had some lean years as well.
I don't know. I think it's big because you're in the moment. I think if you ask Ryan Silverfield right now, is Friday night going to be the biggest game of your tenure? He'd probably agree. I don't know. Has he been asked that this week, Frank?
I mean, he's been asked about the significance of it. He hasn't been asked
framed
in that way. And he said that obviously we understand that this is a big game, and he gave the coach speak or whatever. And he might feel like you guys, the biggest game of the tenure is this year, or this game, but then the goalpost is going to be moved the same can be said against SMU if they lose. You know what I mean?
They both lost to SEC teams. They both took care of business and everything else. Tulane's loss to Ole Miss came without their quarterback, Michael Pratt.
Very significant.
At the time.
Very significant
back
point.
now. So, maybe that, gives them an edge there, just the fact of his presence. But other than that, it looks like a fairly even matchup on paper.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing you have to worry about with Tulane is that defensive line. I mean, they're gonna be coming.
Well, we'll talk more about the X's and O's as we roll along here in the podcast. But as far as where the programs stand, as Tim mentioned, Tulane hasn't always been the top dog, but right now they are the top dog, and Memphis certainly wants to be the top dog. Frank, how much disparity do you believe there is when you take everything into consideration? Remember, their head coach, Willie Fritz, could have left. He stayed. Why? Because there seems like there's a pretty good financial commitment to this program, including what the collectives are doing with the NIL. So how much of a disparity between the two programs right now at this moment?
Not much. I mean, we know what Tulane did last year, but they're, 2 years removed from winning 2 games, the year before. And so
True.
And Memphis did what they did in 2019. So it's not like Tulane is this juggernaut of a program that needs to be taken down like people felt Cincinnati was at one point, right? Tulane and Memphis, last year was their 2019 year, right? Like, this Memphis was what Tulane was last year a couple years ago. So they're right there. It's just Tulane's turn this time. And so Memphis is trying to say, let me have the wheel again, and we'll see where they are. But they're right there with each other.
The on the field, very, very similar. I think they do. If you talk about the whole program in terms of the athletic department, you got more of a money investment. They've got the perfect setup for an on-campus stadium. That's a nice little setup down there, Yulma Stadium. They did it right, So if you kind of broaden it out a little bit, there's some things working in their favor, the NIL stuff and all of that.
If you talk to Tigers fans, and I'm not talking about the once in a while we'll go to a game fan. I'm talking about those 20,000 that are going to be there for Bethune-Cookman as well as Boise State or Tulane. They would probably talk about the fact that they don't want to be in the American Conference. Nobody wants to be in the American Conference. But since they are, they may as well be the best. And with UCF and Cincinnati and Houston, who all at times were thorns in the Tigers' side, with those 3 gone to the Big 12, even with Tulane playing as well as they have over the last 2 years, Texas San Antonio, I think, will make noise. They have before. I think UAB is going to do a good job. But it's wide open, Frank, is it not? And this is what they're waiting for. They're waiting for Memphis to take it over.
Yeah, and I think that's what, to your point, it's wide open. And Memphis fans probably feel like it shouldn't be, because Memphis should be the one shutting the door.
Exactly.
And so, and to you guys' point about how big this game is, this is a chance for them to start shutting that door and saying that this is our league now, and we'll see how that plays out.
Frank, are we past the point of the conversation with realignment that it's important tomorrow for the fans to show up, to look good on television for ESPN, or is that still something significant for the future?
Look, realignment's going to be in the background for however long, but as of right now, to your point, if you're worried about realignment, you have to be mainly focused on taking care of business now. Once the season starts, stuff's happening in the background, but right now it's all football.
The best thing about Cincinnati, Houston, UCF going Power 5 for Memphis is it just made it so much easier to claim that New Year's 6 spot. If you're a Tulane, if you're a Memphis, if you're a Boise, or realistically maybe going into the season if you're a Fresno. I mean, it made that path so much easier. As far as the Friday night stuff and all that, yeah, you want to show up, you want to show out and all that. I think it's a shame this game's being played on a Friday night. We all know why. The almighty dollar, ESPN, they need program and all of that. And I've talked with other coaches about this. The ones I've talked to think it's completely disrespectful for college football
because of high school
to be
football?
Played on a Friday night going up. That should be the high school football kids' night. And it could impact your crowd. I think they're hoping for in the 35,000 range or so, whatever, give or take, whatever they end up getting. Imagine if that whole, you got Christian Brothers MUS on Friday night. You got big games throughout the city, throughout the county. You're going to lose arguably thousands of people who otherwise would be there on a Saturday for what is clearly the biggest game in the Ryan Silverfield tenure.
And those high school game tickets are cheaper.
Yes, but here's the saving grace though. Not every high school team that normally plays on a Friday night is playing because it's fall break.
Fall break.
So city schools are going to be off. And I hope that coaches and parents of particular players on particular programs get together as a team and will come out and watch that game. But your general point is well taken. It just happened to be on a Friday when it's fall break in Memphis. There are other times when it's not on a particular Friday where all the high schools or most of the high schools are off. So it's going to be on a Friday night when they're all playing. And that does do damage as far as attendance is concerned, which hurts the bottom line.
It does. I remember talking to Billy Napier, the old Louisiana coach, current Florida coach, obviously, and he just shook his head about it because his dad was a high school football coach. Like that's what Friday nights are in the fall. Yeah. But dollar trumps respect, I suppose.
No question about it. All right, so you started to allude to the fact, Frank, that this formidable front line of Tulane is one of the things they do extremely well. They get to the quarterback. They sack the quarterback. They stop the run. They're so good against the rush. They got really good guys in the secondary. How is this Memphis offense, which has been up and down, has started almost every game off slow? How can they get rolling? Because they're going to have to put some points up on the board. More than likely, it'll be a high-scoring game.
This has to be, in my opinion, this has to be the best game that we've seen the offensive line play this season. Like they have to show up big because the defensive line, they're going to come, and you don't want Seth back there scrambling. You want to give him time to find his reads in the pocket. And I've said this before. I don't think it's a coincidence that Tulane leads the league in sacks and also leads the league in interceptions. I mean, those things work hand in hand.
I agree.
You bring pressure to the quarterback is going to make mistakes. And so you got to give Seth time to do what he wants to do. And then obviously you got to allow Blake Watson to get going. And so that offensive line, I mean, that's going to be the key to the game.
And a lot of times they'll feast on a young quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback under that pressure to make those throws that end up being picked off. You hope that a seasoned veteran player like Seth Hennigan will not make those mistakes. He's made a few of those. He was a lot better in the Boise State game. Frank, he's obviously pivotal. The quarterbacks always are in every single game. But in this game, even under duress, he can't make bad decisions where it's turnovers.
Absolutely not. And I think the quarterback matchup is going to be especially good because both those quarterbacks have had the bye week to prepare to just like pick apart those opposing defenses. And so when you got that factor and the experience of those two guys, they should put on a show. I
wonder if there's going to be any limitation, and I use the air quotes, for Michael Pratt when he has to run. Because it was a knee injury from earlier in the season where he missed a couple of games. Now, he played in their last game. As Tim said, they had the bye week, so he may be 100%. But more than likely, he won't be. I wonder if that will limit again how many times Willie Fritz wants Michael Pratt to run the ball in designed runs. Obviously, you're under duress. You're gonna scramble. But that could be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think obviously that's going to dictate on the flow of the game of what's happening. If they feel like they can win without having him run a bunch, they'll probably go that way. But I mean, Missouri quarterback Brady Cook, he had an injury that was closer to the game time decision than Michael Pratt,
and he looked great.
Running. I mean, he had a 17-yard run at one point, and so I think Michael Pratt, this is his third game back from injury, right?
Correct.
Right, and so I feel like at this point, he probably feels like his body's rolling. Even if he isn't 100%, mentally, I think he feels like he's there.
Yeah, I wonder, Tim, if he wanted the bye week. He probably didn't. He was back into a groove, but it can hurt, again, when you're coming off an injury.
Yeah, anytime you're banged up. And they always talk about, the ideal week for it being in the middle of the season and all that. But much more important than that, where did air quotes come from? Who started?
Are you looking that up?
Yeah, I'm looking. I can't even.
You're going to call me out?
The
air
Google?
quotes?
No, it's a thing, but like the Google doesn't even have the origin of air
Well,
quotes.
the Google doesn't know. We're in trouble. A big difference in their
Oh,
offense.
wait, I might have found it. Go ahead with that.
Okay,
While I do some
we're
research
waiting with
here.
bated breath for that
All right.
answer. Big difference from the offense from last year, Frank. Is Tajay Spears is not there. He's with the Tennessee Titans playing on Sunday. He is a heck of an athlete, and he certainly was a factor not only in the Memphis win for Tulane, but really in their run to the Cotton Bowl. They have some decent running backs, but nobody's Spears back there.
No, but they do have Micah Hughes, and he seems to have emerged as their top back. It's like you said, he's no Spears, but he still is a quality running back, and so he's not a slouch back there just because he isn't Spears. But they also have some weapons at receiver. One of their receivers is averaging a ridiculous amount of yards per catch, and so like those two together still could be a handful.
They got a transfer from Notre Dame, for goodness sakes.
Yeah, right.
At wide receiver, and that still goes back to the whole NIL, the collectives. They have the money to be able to dish out, to be able to bring in that quality of player. But no, your point's well taken. And as I said, there's going to be good running backs. But I equate it back to, let's say, Memphis. Use them for an example. Last game against Boise, they honored the 2003 New Orleans Bowl team. Well, you had D'Angelo Williams. When D'Angelo Williams wasn't playing anymore, his guy was Joe Doss. Joe Doss was a heck of a running back, but he's not D'Angelo Williams. These guys are really good running backs, but they're not Tajay Spears. That dude, as I said, is an NFL running back. You only have so many NFL running backs. So, hopefully they don't play like he played, because we saw firsthand, Frank, you and I last year. Tim, you weren't at the game in New Orleans, were you?
No.
We saw firsthand what that offense is capable of doing.
Yeah, I'll tell you this to your point. I mean, I guess, the Memphis coaching staff definitely isn't pouting about the fact that Spears is in the NFL now.
All right, what's the answer to the air quotes?
Apparently first used in the mid-'60s, but who made it famous in the late 80s? Think about it hard.
Is it somebody from the political world, somebody from entertainment?
SNL. Steve Martin. Steve Martin was like
Really?
Mr. Air Quote. Yeah.
I had no idea.
You learn
No idea
you
what
listen to the
Steve
Daily
Martin-
Memphian Memphis Tigers podcast, you learn all sorts of
You
stuff.
learn all kinds of things. They're going to tell me there's a Steve Martin podcast that we have.
Frank
as well.
probably doesn't even know who Steve Martin is.
Oh, I'm sure he does.
Frank does not.
The wild and crazy guy.
Oh, my-
Steve Martin.
Actually,
my
I probably recognize him by face, though. I'm sure I do.
He has that silver hair, which he had when he was like 20. I mean, he's had that same color hair, right? Pretty much his entire career. We digress, though, talking about the great Steve Martin.
Oh, I know Steve Martin.
I knew you would know him.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know Steve Martin.
Yeah, he was a wild and crazy guy at one point. I did not know he was Mr. Air Quotes. Okay, how does Memphis win this football game? I'll start with you, Frank.
To the point, it starts with the offensive line, protecting the football, and you got to get Blake Watson going, and you have to find Rock Taylor early and often. Rock Taylor, get him going in that first drive. Let him have catch a couple balls, get his rhythm going, and use him to your capacity.
Tim?
Oh, you score more points than Tulane.
I was waiting for that one. I had Coach Silverfield on my radio show on Wednesday, and I said basically the same thing. Coach, how do you beat Tulane? And don't give me score more points.
The biggest thing for me is Tigers have to get going early. I think they've had some really slow starts.
Oh my gosh.
They gotta that first drive, whether it's, driving 75 yards or whatever it is, they got to get something going early. They got to open up the playbook a little bit. They got to get a little more creative. They got to air it out a little bit, loosen up that Tulane defense, but get some points out of those first couple drives and not punt and a field goal.
Oh, I agree with both you guys, your assessment. But I would say also throw in, as you said, some wrinkles on offense, a little misdirection. Try to get to the edge and see if you can use that speed, that athleticism. Because I'm a little worried, Frank, if it's a mano-a-mano situation, even though we have seen Memphis, for the most part, although a little spotty, be physical. We saw them as physical as Missouri was. And now people will argue, Missouri wasn't that physical. Well, Missouri's physical. They're an SEC team, and Memphis kept with them. But we saw the first half of Navy where Memphis was pushed around all over the field. And then the second half, they came back and were more physical. So we got to see physical play. But I think if you're just depending on that mano-a-mano, Tulane has a big advantage as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, and to your point about what happened at the Navy, second half adjustments are going to be huge, right? And so we saw second half adjustments, really second quarter adjustments with Boise State. We saw that with Navy. That's going to be huge. But as far as, like the physicality, to your point, to kind of negate some of that, use your speed. You dictate how the game is being played, right? You make it as physical or as less physical as you would like, and you have Tulane react to you. You have to be the one to force the effort. Don't be reactionary to what they're doing.
I didn't know Greg was bilingual, by the way. He dropped not one but two mano-a-mano.
Hey.
Man to man for you folks out there that don't know what I'm talking about. All right, so 8 straight times in this century, Memphis has beaten Tulane at now Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. 15-2 overall at home. Every season, your team is supposedly different, right? And for the most part, it is. But when you get a gaudy record like that, there's something there. And I could tell you firsthand that they've been talking about it in New Orleans because we had their play-by-play guy on, and he said, we know, Tulane knows, and they understand the dominance Memphis has had at home. When teams are different every year, makeups are different every year, how can you have that type of dominance? Why do they have that type of dominance, Tim Buckley, at home against Tulane?
I got nothing for you. I don't know.
Is it just one of those quirks in sports when a team dominates another team at a certain venue?
Well, and it's not just Tulane. I know that this streak has obviously gone beyond Ryan's tenure, but since I've been here and watching Ryan's coach football teams, they always play better at home, right? And so that's just something.
But why?
You don't really know, and I don't even think the coaching staff can tell you why, right? Because, if you ask the coaching staff, well, heck, we wish we could play that well on the road is what they would tell you. But I think
you're comfortable, right, to your surroundings. You're either in your own bed or they stay over at that Holiday Inn together on campus. They're together.
And I do think that part of it is when the games get close, like in key moments, you're less uptight when you're on a field that you're comfortable with and you're in a stance where all the noise is actually cheering on your behalf. You feel a little bit more calm in those tight moments and close games as opposed to being on the road.
Yet you keep falling behind to start the game.
Yeah.
So you're 17-0 in the hole against Boise. You're in the hole against Navy. So you could be comfortable and know that you're at home. Do you go out and you take the field and you're maybe too comfortable?
Well, I mean, part of it could be it's just a good coaching staff halftime adjustment situation that
earlier.
That plays a part. I don't think it's an atmosphere thing, frankly, or anything like that, because that stadium is so huge. And even if you do have an announced 25,000, that realistically is probably closer to 22 or 20 or whatever. It's not like, you're hearing roars and you're just getting jacked up because of the crowd. So it's a mystery to me.
So that's an interesting point you bring up. It's a cavernous stadium, we know, but there have been times, I think, that, and I'm not talking about just this season, over the years when that stadium got really, really, really loud. So do you hear that, Frank? I know you guys are up in the press box. I'm on the sideline. I got my earphones on, plugged in to the Tiger Network, so I'm not hearing it as well. But what's kind of the talk about the home field advantage from a noise standpoint, from a fandom standpoint?
Well, if you look at the numbers, we can talk about the numbers of fans that are in the crowd. But the student section, in my opinion, this year has been pretty solid.
Improved, right?
They've shown up.
Yeah, especially that first game against Bethune-Cookman. And so, the student section, that's where, in my opinion, that's the foundation of your fan rah-rah, is that student section. When that student section is rocking, other people kind of feed off of that. And so the student section has been pretty solid. But to the point about the home versus away, this isn't just a Memphis football thing, right? Take the NBA, for instance. If you take the game logs from individual players from when they play at home and when they play on the road, a lot of those players play better at home.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, it's you can find a lot of correlations to players and teams being better at home. But Tulane, for instance, they've been pretty good on the road, though. So
you probably hear it more on the sideline. You're more cognizant. We're in a hermetically sealed 130-year-old press box. So, but
that'll change soon, Tim. We hope. Fingers crossed.
Wait, I will say this about noise, though. If you can come even close to replicating the noise that was in St. Louis when they played in the dome that Missouri crowd made, that Seth Hennigan handled brilliantly, lost his voice because of it, but handled brilliantly. If you can come even close to replicating for that, you can make it tough on Michael Pratt and Tulane.
You know what's interesting is in talking with Ryan Silverfield earlier this week, he said, I don't know what it is, but we always seem to struggle on the road at Tulsa, at Temple, and he mentioned at Tulane as well. And then we were talking
T-teams.
T-teams. Is that it?
Yeah, don't play a T-team, then you're good.
Wow, okay. I didn't look at it that way, but I think you might be right. No, he was saying we just these teams, for some reason, no matter how good they are or how bad they are, we get off to bad starts. We were talking about the situation with Tulane in Memphis and how you guys have had the domination over the years. In other words, he doesn't know. We do the same work, the same prep. We're ready to go. We're fired up. We take the field. We seem to struggle. I guess it's just one of those quirks in sports.
Yeah, and that's why I think that in order to kind of help jumpstart that, I mean, in those first 4 or 5 plays, I mean, I'd like to see a play action deep ball down the field to see what to get it going.
Right.
Because I think a big play like that could change the whole aura of like a slow start, right? All it takes is one big play, or if Blake Watson turns a 5-yard gain into a 12-yard gain on a missed tackle or something like that. They just need that big spark, and it may have to come from the play calling of them scheming that spark into the first quarter.
Maybe that spark will come seconds before the game starts because the guy who's going to let out those players coming out of the locker room onto the field in front of those cheering fans is one, Jerry the King Lawler. It's wrestling quasi-afternoon/night at Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. And the King, who has been through his own health issues and is absolutely amazing. I mean, the guy is incredible. He's down health-wise. He's back up. He's down. He's back up. He is certainly a treasure of this city. And there are people that absolutely adore, a lot of them. You know this. You've been around a long time, Tim. They adore professional wrestling. And so wrestling is going to be a part of it. They're going to have the wrestling night, again, starting in the afternoon at 4:30, and then Jerry's going to do his thing. So maybe that's all they need.
If Jerry Lawler can't get you jacked up, who can?
He's done it for the Grizzlies. He's done it for – so I'll ask you guys this in closing. Since we're on the subject of professional wrestling, it'll be a big part of the game on Friday night. Who, Frank Bonner, is your favorite professional wrestler of all time?
I got to give you a favorite. I can only give you one.
So you're a fan of pro wrestling, the way you just answered that, right?
Well,
I can only give you one.
Well, I've got 3. I don't know who the one is. Between The Undertaker, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Batista, I don't know who the one is. I'll probably go with The Undertaker.
The Undertaker. All right, Tim.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the Lawler superstar Bill Dundee era. I again, disdain in my voice as well for having to narrow it to one. And since Frank cheated on that, I'm going to make it a tie between Coco Beware and Ernie the Cat Lad.
Coco Beware is going to be there on Friday.
Oh my! Are you serious?
Yes, I'm serious.
Coco
Beware will be there.
All right, column done.
Well, next week, I know, Tim, you'll be out of the country for a while, so we're going to miss you. But Frank and I are going to talk about what will hopefully be one of the biggest wins in Ryan Silverfield's tenure for the University of Memphis. If not, it's back to the drawing board. A big one next week as the Tigers will travel to, all of a sudden, playing very well, UAB and their rookie head coach, Trent Dilfer. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Appreciate all your help. Folks, be sure to check out our other podcasts here at the Daily Memphian. First of all, the Daily Memphian's food podcast. It's called Sound Bites. It's hosted by Chris Harrington and Holly Whitfield. The Sidebar with Eric Barnes is about arts, culture, and everything in between. And the Grizzlies podcast, also hosted by Chris Harrington with Drew Hill. All of our podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts. Until next time, have a great day, everybody.